Hello and welcome to another LinkedIn Live with me, Garth Sharif. I believe this is 3 or 4 weeks in a row on Tuesdays. Hope everyone had a great long weekend. And where I am, the weather is getting better. Thankfully, I think we're coming out of winter, and that's helpful for me and my mood and my stress. I appreciate the spring. Not that I don't like the winter, but I don't like the winter. I am not a winter person, so I'm happy to be moving out of the spring. And also, a lot of things that come with the spring. Baseball for me, sports, baseball, French Open, and the NBA playoffs. The Toronto Raptors, who are near and dear to my heart, who've had a disappointing season, I think will play a playing game against the Chicago Bulls tomorrow. I don't know if I have the ability to watch that game without it contributing to more stress than I need right now. But we'll see how that goes. So hopefully everyone is doing all right out there. And today on this LinkedIn Live, I thought we'd check in on recruitment and retention. This is a topic I've been talking about for a while. I have on-demand courses on it, deliver live webinars on recruitment and retention, specifically in the CPA space, CPA firms and organizations that are in that industry, finance and accounting industry, but it applies to everyone that's looking at their employees, potential employees, new hires, and we've gone through a series of trends over the years post COVID. We had the Great Resignation or Big Quit. We have quiet quitting, quiet firing, and I'm sure there'll be another trend that emerges on TikTok or whatever social media you're on, and sometimes that's where it starts bubbling, and then it becomes part of the public consciousness. And it's sometimes distracting when we get too invested in a particular trend. And quiet quitting had a lot of both interest as to what it was, but also a lot of sort of angst as to what it represented. Again, this sort of employee empowerment. And when I used to talk about it, there was different views, but a lot of them weren't exactly positive. It was a sense that employees were asking for too much. This hybrid environment had gone too far, and I wanted to check in on what the current job environment is like, the job market in both the main markets I work in, the US and Canada, just see how things are going, but also some through lines. A lot of the times when we talk about recruitment and retention, especially for my space, the space that I work in with CPA firms, we tend to just kind of change our strategies based on the job market. If the job market is really difficult in terms of recruiting and turnover is high, retention is an issue, then employers with some gritting of teeth tend to think, okay, we need to give more, we need to be flexible. But it's almost this sort of pacifying thing to do in the short term until the job market switches to where it is easier to recruit and easier to retain, just because the job market gets tighter. And I don't think that's the right approach. I think you should have a consistent strategy regardless of whether the job market is easy or hard to recruit and retain, and it should be based on some core principles. But let's just check in on both um, Canada and the U.S. as it relates to the job market, and they are different places. And it's good just to look. So this is for the Canadian job market. So the March data came out, and there's a net gain in jobs, 34,700 jobs per Statistics Canada, and unemployment is at 5%. So this is just like in Canada showing a healthy, resilient job market. Obviously this plays along with interest rates, and what's happening there is interest rates right now are not being hiked by the Bank of Canada. Will that change? That affects potentially what will happen with recruitment and retention in the job market overall. But still, this article from the Globe and Mail, the job market is still strong. So that means on the other side for employers, um, it's potentially harder to recruit and retain. There's a healthy, robust, moving job market. This is from the NPR or NPR in the US, where the job market is still adding jobs, like 236,000 jobs in the US in March. But this is from the Labor Department on Friday. But what we're seeing is a slowdown in growth, the number of jobs being added. And this slowdown may indicate a slowdown in the overall job market activity, making it difficult for the employee to find jobs, and also make retention a little bit easier from the employer if the employees don't have any options. So two pictures, slightly between Canada and the U.S. Canada showing maybe a still growing and fertile job market, and the US might be shifting. But part of this is to avoid looking at this and saying, okay, now as an employer, as a boss, as someone, I have agency now. I have power. I can be a little bit more this way or that way because of the job market, or you don't have as much. You're fearful of losing employees or the difficulty of recruiting. So, it's always important to follow the job market and specifically to your industry. And you already probably know as someone who's hiring at your organization, and also just understanding when people leave and when people are brought on, what's happening within your world. The other challenge, as we are still in the hybrid space, is the conversation that is continuing around what to do with the hybrid space. Like, should we still be in this space? What do employers want? My reading of the tea leaves from both my experience working with different organizations and a bunch of reading. So employers want people to come back to work. It's not just the office space that goes unused. For example, I live in Toronto. Those office spaces are expensive, and the downtown core, and there needs to be sort of a reason to pay those types of rents or leases. And so there's sort of an incentive to bring back people to the office. And also, let's be honest, in some ways, for those that are managers and leading others, it is, especially if you have the experience before the pandemic, it is easier to manage people when they're in the office, right? That's been your experience most of your career. You've had to make some changes to the hybrid environment. But now in a post-COVID world, you might be coming back and starting to feel like it is easier to delegate, easier to manage, maybe easier to motivate and provide feedback when people are in the office. And that's the general trend. Here's another article that I'll share with you from the Globe and Mail. I'll make these articles available, and these are all recent. Companies turn to baristas, free food, and socializing to lure employees back to the office. And this is specifically a Canadian example, but I think this is the same in a lot of dense working areas like Toronto, Chicago, New York. In terms of what employers are trying to do to get employees to come back in the office. This hybrid model, it has always been something in theory that's good, and their employers believe in it, maybe for mental health, but also because they have to because of the job market. But this article goes into the effort employers are trying to do to bring people back into the office, because they feel there's potentially an importance in productivity, innovation. Whether that be true or not, it's a feeling a lot of companies have. So there are baristas, food, commuting programs, and also to really sort of use the space that these organizations have that are somewhat vacant. So there's efforts here, and I think those are good efforts. Those are good efforts by these organizations to say, let's do more for an employee. Now, of course, they're self-interested, right? There's a need to pull people back, and this is why I say, if the job market changes and you can make demands of these employees because the consequences are they don't have anywhere else to go, will you still offer these perks, right? And this is the challenge when you kind of give things sort of as a one-off to motivate without understanding sort of what the longer game is. And I'm saying that this is not the case for these organizations. These are large organizations. In this article, they probably have a bigger plan as to how to retain and recruit. But if you just try to lure people back with extrinsic motivation, but the culture is still difficult, and also employees know what it's like to work at home, and there's a dichotomy between working at home and the office, and it might not be solved by just having free coffee or more socialization. It involves a deeper sort of consideration of your employees and potential recruits, and that's why I come back to just basic tenets of recruitment and retention, and it's really about caring about your people and understanding why you are asking employees to do things and getting them to understand it from your point of view, but also that it's important for the organization and the health of the organization, and not just because. Sometimes we say we gotta come back to the office because it's easier to innovate, easier to collaborate. And this was Apple did this. Apple did this with this open letter for their return to office policies and said, "Hey, it's going to be easier to collaborate." And they didn't really have any real evidence of that. It was more anecdotal. It just feels like it's better to be in the office. And those that have experienced the hybrid working space might say, you know what, it feels better to be at home. I'm more creative at home. I'm more energized. And so, I'm not arguing whether your organization should have 2 or 3 days at home or whether they should be in the office 5 days a week. That's a choice the organization makes, but it's one that has to be done with the idea that the employees will be, taken care of, and not just with free coffee. And what we see with this, and a lot of the articles I've read and my experiences are, it comes back to culture, right? What is the organizational culture? This is a Harvard Business Review article. What great Harvard cultures differently from James Stainer, Michael Lee, and Jesse Anderson. And whether it's a hybrid culture or a fully back to work in the office culture, it's about how we make sure our employees are connected and feel like they're supported and that the organization cares for them. It's about the organizational culture. And if for the most part, I think organizations want people to come back to the office, like large organizations, but there's still an idea of having a couple days or 1 day at home, or more. But the idea that it's not going to be full days in the office, and if you're doing some work with your employees at home, this idea of asynchronous communication is really important, where employees are doing work. Uh, Not at the sort of real time as their manager monitoring them, that they're doing it in the background and they communicate. But communication is really the key here. So asynchronous communications occur when you send a message, they get the message, and it's not happening in real time. So an asynchronous conversation is not instant messaging, or if you're using Slack, for example, it's email, it's voicemail, it's recorded messages, and they're really really important because in the hybrid space they give employees a chance to digest. And so understanding how to use asynchronous and synchronous communication in this article is important, but also a part of what we're trying to help employers do for their employees is set clear expectations for what do we expect from our employees, whether it be in the office or at home. And this is something that comes through in this article. It comes through in other articles, another Harvard Business Review article that really just says to the employee base that's out there that the employer is trying to create a culture that is open to communication and opening to find the platform that is in their best interest, because the organization is of course the one in the goods and services they're employing, the employee, they're recruiting them into the organizational mission statement, but trying to also say to the employee, you're part of this. And so that part of leadership, organizational culture, and psychological safety, which I talk about a lot, I think that's bedrock foundational stuff. Regardless if it's a job market swings one way or the other, just understanding that this is the consistent organizational culture we are creating here. We want to check in with our employees. We want our employees to communicate with us and feel safe. That's psychological safety. And that's part of leadership. And then once you have that trust, the trust with your employees, then you might be able to have these conversations where you ask for more uh, of them. Maybe you ask for them to come in 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week, because it's not just you're doing this just because you need to fill up office space. There's a real cultural and social reason that isn't being just told to the employees, that the employees have also understood and bought into. This is a long game for how your organization wants to operate. And we're still, like, again, the data on productivity and innovation collaboration is not clear on whether it is better to work at home or in the office. It depends on the industry and service line. But, there's a lot of information that says working from home has a lot of benefits. Now, the social part of it, not as much, maybe, right? The interaction. But if that's a key part of your organizational culture, that needs to be part of the communication space about why it's important, other than just physically being in the same space. A lot of the times, and this is from the Apple open letter, the idea of like being in the same space is just socially good. we know this pre-pandemic. I was at an office. It doesn't mean that I'm coming into work, everyone's friends, and there's this amazing social, collaborative, friendly, fun atmosphere. Sometimes they're all in the office and they're all miserable together. And misery loves company. Maybe not. Maybe not in that space. Maybe some of the issues and conflicts are actually um, getting worse when you're in the office and you're not communicating. Communication, regardless if you're in the office or remote working or hybrid working, that needs to always be worked on. So sometimes we think bring back people to the office and our problems will go away from the employer point of view. But pre-COVID, and there was all kinds of conversations about how we manage the office and employee utility and engagement. So part of this is just to have these foundational ideas of what you're trying to accomplish as an organization. To me, this is not just an HR issue. This is not just recruitment and retention, give it to HR or just, go to ZipRecruiter. To me, this is leadership, understanding how we look at the organization and how our employees help the organization and we help the employees with the organizational mission statements and goals of the organization. These are bedrock things. So quiet quitting. I'll start a new hashtag. What's the next one? Uh, quiet chat GBTing. I don't know what that is. That probably is not going to go anywhere. This is why I'm not on TikTok. Well, actually, I'm not on TikTok for various reasons, including privacy. But I'm not going to be sending any trends up anytime soon. But I'll try to think of one. But whatever the summer of 2023 workplace trend is, don't get distracted by that. I think it's really important to care about your employees and really keep the lines of communication open regardless of the job market. So thanks. Just to check in on recruitment and retention, job markets in Canada and the US still pretty strong. US showing some signs of slow growth. And so recruitment and retention, I think overall, big picture, still a challenge in this environment. But again, if things change and we had hit a recession or whatever, don't all. I would highly advise against all of a sudden, now putting your foot down and saying everyone's back in the office. You have nowhere else to go. Ha ha ha! I got you. I just think that's a poor policy. So thanks for this. It's a check in. I think I'll do this check in every month just to see the job market. I did want to quickly because we're working on our website as we have some events coming up, and it's been going through some updates, some good. If as an entrepreneur, your website is a key part of your business, and just like anything that is in development, uh, there could be good and bad in that development process. And so we've had some good stuff with the website and some things that have challenged us, but overall we're doing a little bit better now with in terms of the functionality. And just for those that are watching, I am both a provider of continuing professional development in the US or in Canada, CPD in Canada, and CPE in the US. And so, depending on where you are, if you're in Canada, you'll see this site. If you're in the US, you'll see a CPE site because their requirements are different between the two companies. So, this is the Canadian site. And right now, under events, if you go to events, and this is working now because I was doing this as a demo last couple weeks, and it was some issues because we're using a geo target, so that if you're in Canada, you're getting this version. If you're in the US, you're getting another. We have some free webinar series for this spring and summer coming up, both in Canada and the US. This is the Canadian one on audit and insurance update. We have actually quite a number of people signed up. 42 people signed up for that one. Blockchain conversation on June 16th. How many people signed up for that one? Let's just take a look here. 30 people have signed up for that one, and a conversation on the great retention. That's what I'm calling it. Employee retention strategies for CPA firms. And this one is not open yet. I got to open this one up. So I'm going to open that one up, make sure people can sign up for it. You'll see that open up shortly, but that one's going to be available July 14th. So hopefully you can join me for those free webinars, and you'll see them in the US as well, just different times because there's different requirements for certificates and things like that. So thank you for watching today, the check-in on recruitment and retention. I'm going to say, as I come to an end of my LinkedIn Live, go Raptors go, they have been very frustrating. They've tested my retention of their my engagement and retention. I'll always be a Raptor fan, but it's been a very frustrating season, and just bracing myself for more frustration on Wednesday, and we'll see what happens. But if you know you're a Raptor fan, good luck to us all. Anyway, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everyone.